a 20-mile walk, and as we were walking, I'm looking up, Grandma, why so-and-so? You know, they like to ask questions. Grandma, why the trees look like that? Oh, there's a snake over there. Baby, there's no snake over there. It looked like that's a limb on a tree, honey. You know, talking to her. And she even got to the point that, because I didn't have no shoes on, she would pick me up and put me on her back. And she would tote me as such. Yes, I love my grandmother. And she took me over to another slave owner's plantation. In that plantation, there was Aunt Katie. Ma'am, I didn't do anything to Aunt Katie, but she hated me. She would whip me at any time she could find a time to whip me. She would feed all the other kids, but she wouldn't feed me. And the great thing about that, sir, reason why I love my grandmother, because my grandmother got in Miss Katie's face and told her, leave my baby alone. And Miss Katie, she never touched me again. My grandmother. She says, Freddie, go outside and play with the other children. I say, no, Grandma, I want to stay with you. I want to stay with you, Grandma. I want to stay. Go outside and play with the other kids. No, I want to stay with you. Baby, I'm going to tell you one more time. So I go outside. When I get outside, I just stand by the wall. And I see all the other kids playing. And one of the kids came to me, hey, Freddie, how you doing? Get out of my face. I don't want to talk to you. I want my grandmother. So you know what he did? He went inside. I guess he was going in to get my grandmother. Then he comes back outside and he said, well, Freddie, your grandmother gone. No, she ain't. You lying. She ain't gone. She gone. And then when 3 or 4 other kids came out and said, your grandmother's gone, I just got on the ground and started kicking. Because my grandmother, she left me. And when she left me again, ladies and gentlemen, I never saw her again. Now, just to further tell you a little bit more about my grandmother, she took care of my master's family. My grandmother, when my master and all of them were little, she breastfed them. She bathed them. Yes, and she fed them, she clothed them. She put them to sleep at night. My grandmother. But as the story goes, when my grandmother got old and senile, ladies and gentlemen, they took her out in the woods. And they had her live in a cabin by herself. And when she died, they didn't have a proper funeral for my grandmother. They didn't have her laid up in front of the church where the pastor did a proper eulogy. The last rites, none of that came to pass. But what they did do, they just dug a grave. And they dumped my grandmother's carcass in that grave. And that was the end of my grandmother. Betty. They say that my father was a white man. I've never seen a slave male man walking around with a sailor's cap on, or on the weekends sailing in his boat on the Chesapeake. This person that I'm talking to, there was rumors going around that this man, I'm just going to tell you because you're looking at me. Okay, I don't know what everybody else is doing. But they say this man was my father, Aaron Ashley. Yeah. And my father proclaimed, all right, he whipped me like he whipped the rest of the slaves. And as a young kid, I will be honest with you, I had some privileges, but not because I knew that he was my father. I didn't know that. And the biggest feel is that he had a daughter, Lucretia. I had no idea that this woman was my big sister, and nor did she have an idea that I was her little brother. But I will tell you that at times when privileges came about, little extra food came about, I managed to get some. A little extra sleep, I managed to get that from Miss Lucretia. But she didn't know that I was, and I didn't know that I was, or she was, but it must be something in the water, you know, the genes, you know, that tells the truth. Well, let me just let you know that as a slave child, we got 2 gowns a year. And if we outgrew those gowns, ladies and gentlemen, it was just air to the wind. For the slave adult males, they got 2 pair of pants and 2 shirts they had to wear all year. For the women, they got 2 dresses that they had to wear all year. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I know for a fact you did not hear come out my mouth right now that there were shoes included. No, there was no shoes. When we ate, ladies and gentlemen, we did not have proper silverware. We had, well, let me ask you a question. How many of you all have been to the beach? Anybody here ever collect seashells? Yeah, all right. Well, those seashells were our utensils for the most part, where we would sloop up our food. If we didn't have the seashells, or if we didn't have a stick to rake it up, we had the magic of our hands, where we would sloop it up to get our meals. In reference to how we slept, ladies and gentlemen, we didn't have the beds, if you will. And me as a little kid, I slept in a potato sack, especially during the winter. Can you imagine the snow and we had no shoes, no warmth but a fireplace? Yes, that was our life. And the most scary thing or experience I ever experienced as a child, while sleeping with my family, I hear this screaming and this howling. And it kind of frightened me as I woke up. But when I woke up, I was so curious that I got up from that potato sack and I made my way to where I heard the screaming coming. And as I heard it, and I got behind the wall to see what it was, well, I have you know, it was my master, Aaron Anthony, with my Aunt Hester strung up. And he's whipping my Aunt Hester. And the more that whip struck her back and the blood splattered off her back, she screamed. And the more she screamed and the more she hollered, the more he whipped her. And I can hear him saying, "You're mine. The next time I see you with that other slave from across the way, I'm going to whip you even more." That other slave was Ned. Ned and my Aunt Hester was sort of kind of courtship. My master, he wanted to courtship with her. And I'm sure you all heard about the master making their way to the slave house late in the morning. Well, I was so scared, ma'am. I was so scared, I ran back. I got up and I made my way and I ran back. And I jumped back in my potato sack. And I laid on my face with my head to the ground, crying, scared, shivering. Because I never seen anything like that. It was very frightening. And especially coming from Master Anthony. It's time to move on. Miss Lucretia. I already told you. Did I tell you about Miss Lucretia? Well, sir, I'm going to talk to you because I see you staring at me. One day, guess what she did? She called me, "Frederick! Frederick!" And I ran to her. And as I ran to her, she said, "I want you to go upstairs in the big house." "Big house, ma'am?" "Yes, I want you to go to the big house." So I ran to the big house, and she said, "Go up on the 2nd floor, and I want you to get into that bathtub up there." "Bathtub?" She said, "Yes, and I want you to clean all that dirt off of you." Well, I have you all know that was 7 to 8 years of dirt that had piled up on me. So when I got up there and I saw that water, how clean it was, I have you know I didn't hesitate. I jumped right into that water. And when I jumped into that water, instead of immediately start washing, I was in there splashing because I'd never seen clear water like that. The only water I ever saw was that muddy water down by the pond that the animals drank and washed and did their business in. The only water I ever saw was down at the pond, where I saw my mothers, the women, so-called down there washing their clothes, so-called washing the eating utensils. I already told you what the eating utensils were. But being invited to go up on the 2nd floor and jump in that clear water, oh, new and a pair of shoes. Ladies and gentlemen, I've never wore a pair of shoes in my 7 years of life. But when I put those pants and them shirts on, that shirt on, I felt the new. And when I put my feet in those brand new shoes, I screamed like I was getting beat again. Because of the fact that I've never wore a shoe in my life, and not only that, I had so many cracks on the bottom of my foot. You could take a pin and put it in between and it would stay there. So when I put my foot in those shoes, you can only imagine that my feet were so squeezed up. And I was crying, but it was a good cry. And I was walking as such. You might have thought it was Herman Monster before Herman Monster. But it was a feeling of being in those shoes. And I'm sure we all have. Raise your hand if you have ever experienced putting your feet in a brand new shoes and it sends your feet are swelling. Yeah, we all know that feeling. Well, as I came downstairs, Miss Lucretia told me, she said, son, you're going to Baltimore. Now, please understand. Notice how everything connects. Miss Lucretia was Master Aaron Anthony's daughter. Miss Lucretia married Thomas Ard. They're sending me to Baltimore. When I get to Baltimore, I see 3 people standing there in Fells Point. The 3 people I see standing there is no other than Master Hugh Ard. I just told you Thomas Ard was married to Lucretia Ard, so you get it, brother and brother, right? And next to him is Miss Sophia, his wife. The little kid is Tommy, Thomas, named after his uncle Thomas. Well, when I got off that car and I started walking towards them, quite naturally, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm walking, I'm getting close, look at my faces, I immediately dropped my head. Because we're not allowed to look at white folks in their face. So I dropped my head. So as I got up close, I'm standing in front of Miss Sophia. Now please understand, Miss Sophia never owned a slave, never worked with a slave, and never knew how to control, whip, stern, be turbulent with a slave. So as I came up to her with my head down, she said, "Hi, Frederick. Lift your face up and look at me." I'm just a little kid, I don't know. So I'm saying to myself, as I got my head down, this lady must want to kill me. I ain't gonna look her in the face. She's crazy. She said, "Frederick, raise your head up, baby." She called me baby. I still ain't gonna raise mine because I'm not gonna fall into the bait. And all of a sudden, I see her hand come up and she puts it under my chin. And she lifts my face up. So as she lifts my face up, ladies and gentlemen, I come up as such. Now she's right here in my face. I can smell her. I can smell her breath. Matter of fact, I smell the eggs and bacon. And as she says, "Frederick, open your eyes." I'm like, this lady really want to kill me. I am not opening my eyes. She said, "Frederick, I'm telling you one more time to open up your eyes." So as such, I moved forward. As I moved forward, I presented myself as such. And as I looked in her eyes, I saw the big blue eyes. I said the red cheeks and the teeth that look like they last forever. And she says, "Welcome, Freddie." And I didn't say anything. So, next thing I know, Master Hugh Ard steps before me. And he says, right away, you know what I did, right? I dropped my head and he says, "Frederick, you're here to take care of Tommy. Whatever Tommy needs, you will serve it to him. You are Tommy's play toy. You understand me?" "Yes, Master. I's Tommy play toy." And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, here comes little Tommy. Little Tommy, he grabs my hand and he shakes it. And he says, "Hi, Freddie." And I'm like, "Hi, I'm your slave." "No, you're my friend." "Oh, okay, I'll take that back. But still, ma'am, I was his slave." Right? So as time moved on, anything that Tommy needed, quite naturally, I was his servant. I had to help him get dressed. I'd make up his bed. I would carry his books for him. Right? Now, Tommy had an advantage on me. There was one place that Tommy went that I was not allowed to go. Anybody want to take a guess where it was? School. I was not allowed to go to school. That's right. Now, Miss Sophia, as I mentioned to you, had no idea about slaves. So and she also had a little issue about reading. So one day, as she was in the living room sitting, she was doing her ABCs. And she says, Freddie, come Freddie. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, I came and I was about to take a seat on the floor. She said, no, Freddie, not on the floor, sitting on the couch. And I was like, I took a long swallow. You sure? She said, yes. So as I sat there, we're going over the ABCs, and she says, A, B, C, and all of a sudden when she got to D, boom! The door opened up. It was Master Hugh Ard. And when he came in and he saw what was going on, and he said, Sophia, don't you be teaching those little Negroes how to read. You teach them how to read, and they don't want to take over. She responded, but Hugh, I didn't know. Now you know. Don't let me catch you teaching those Negroes how to read. Okay. And then he stepped before me. And when he stepped before me, right away, ladies and gentlemen, without hesitation, and he stood right there and he said, you're not here to read. If I catch you here reading again, I'm going to give you the worst whipping. You understand me? Yes, Master, I said. I's never going to read. I's hate reading. Reading is bad. Now, my question to each one of you all, how many times have your mouth said something but your brain said something else? Well, that's what was going on. Because as I was telling him I would never read, ladies and gentlemen, he opened up Pandora's box. I couldn't wait to get my hand on a book. And my time of getting my hand on a book was when the family left. When the family left, I would race up to Tommy's room. I would open up that book, and I would start, as much as I could, read. One day, sir, Frederick, what are you doing up there? Right away, I closed the book, and I ran back down to the tip of the stairwell, and I said, I was cleaning up, Master. You're not up there reading, are you? No, Master, I was not reading. Reading's bad. Don't let me catch you. No, sir. Well, as time moved on, they started sending me to the store. They would send me to the store on errands. And what I would do, I would go to the kitchen, get bread and break it up and put it in my pocket, and I'd make my way to the store. When I got to the store, there were white boys there. They were hungry. I was hungry. They were hungry for what? Food. And I was hungry for? And I would challenge them. I would challenge them and I would make them spell words for me. And as they spelled those words for me, sir, I would feed them bread. And they would say, Freddie, you are my friend. I said, yeah, just keep teaching me, and I'll keep feeding you. And not only that, they got to the point they would pay me to go to the store. My question is, how much would they pay me to go to the store? Anybody want to take a guess? My masters would pay me to go to the store. Well, guess what? They will pay me 1 penny to go to the store each time I go to the store. And ladies and gentlemen, I have you know, I saved those pennies. I saved each one of those pennies until I got enough to buy my first book. The first book I bought was the Columbian Order. Inside that book was speeches from the likes of George Washington, Edgar Allan Poe, Thomas Jefferson, and many others. I read that book until I had it memorized. And it even taught me how to speak. So much so, I would take pellets, little pellet rocks, and put them on my tongue so it would help me pronounce words even more fluent. Well, got to the point, I'm probably about 16 years old now. I'm talking like Master now. I'm challenging Master. So Master tells Miss Sophia, that boy, he ain't talking like a slave no more. We're going to send him to somebody that's going to have to correct that boy. So they wound up farming me out to Master Corbett. When I walked on that plantation, ladies and gentlemen, I walked on it just like this. 6 months later, I was walking like this. Because he would whip me every day because he wanted to break this stallion. And ladies and gentlemen, he almost broke me. He almost broke me because I could see myself standing on the side of the Chesapeake as the water was freely roaming, moving. I would talk to the Chesapeake and say, look at all the freedom you got. I'm going to be a slave for the rest of my life. Well, one day, we were out fanning the mill, and all of a sudden I got tired because of the heat, and I fell. When I fell, Master came out, and he saw me sitting, laying there, and he kindly said, Frederick, what's wrong? I fell into his web. That's what I did. I said, Master, I was hurting right here. Where you hurting at? I was hurting on my side. Well, when I told him I was hurting on my side, I have you know he kicked me in my side. And he pulled a limb off the tree and commenced to beat me, and blood just sprouting out from the top of my head. But I had just enough strength to run 7 miles back to Master Huard's house. When I burst in the door and I said, Master, please move me, because Master Corbet, he's trying to kill me. He just stood up and pointed to the door and said, if you don't go back, I will kill you. Well, I love Miss Sophia, man. You know why I love Miss Sophia? Because she said, Hugh, please let Frederick stay. She paused, and I said, oh man, I'm free, I'm gonna stay here. And then after that pause, she said, tonight. Well, it gave me enough time to go upstairs and get myself together, bathe, and get me a good night's sleep, which was a Friday night. Saturday night, I come downstairs, and I start walking down the stairs, my stomach growling. It's Saturday morning, they're having breakfast. So right away, I make my way to the kitchen. As I go to the kitchen, I put my hand on the chair to sit. Master stood up and he pointed his finger. That was a signal to leave. So ladies and gentlemen, as I made my way back to the plantation, I'm coming over the fence. Here comes Master Corbet with the whip. I take this leg, this right leg, take it back off, and I run back into the woods. He said, I ain't worried about him, because guess what? He's going to get hungry and he's going to come back. You're right, I was hungry, but I didn't come back. I wasn't going to come back for a whipping. Well, the next day I come back, ladies and gentlemen, guess what happened? I put my leg over that fence, and here he come again with a whip. This time I run, and when I run this time, I run into a free slave by the name of Sandy. As I run into Sandy, Sandy invited me into his home. Well, the next morning he said, Frederick, come go with me. I go with him, and all of a sudden, like a dog, he gets down and starts digging with his hands, and he comes up with a rabbit foot. And he says, Frederick, if you put this rabbit foot in your pocket, I promise you that mean old master won't touch you again. By the way, I said, I don't believe in that superstition. He said, okay, well, go back there and get a whipping. I said, give me that. And I put it in my right pocket. Well, when I got back to the plantation this time, I put my leg over, and guess what? Here he comes again. But this time he's coming, he don't have a whip in his hand. This time he comes, he invites me over. Back onto the plantation, friendly. Howdy, Frederick. Come on in. We miss you. And I'm like, you know, with that curious look on my face. Oh boy, this is a setup to a whipping. And he says, take the rest of the day off. I said, okay, master. He said, but tomorrow morning, I need you to go clean out the barn. I said, yes, master, I clean out the barn. Well, the next morning comes, I'm in there cleaning the barn. He comes in, the door opened up, and he got the whip. He throws out that whip, and it ties around my left leg. I had just enough strength to go down and untie that whip, and guess what? I started pulling master towards me. And as I pulled him towards me, we got into it. And we wrestled for about 2 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, my intention was not to hurt master or kill master. Because if I would have killed him, quite naturally, I would have been hanging somewhere. But the moral of the story was to keep master away from me and to let master know that I'm not a weak slave. We fought for 2 hours. Some of the other slaves, he tried to tell them to get me, and I told them, don't you touch me. Another slave that came in, a burly woman, she looked, and she said, Master, I'm not here to help you fight Frederick. That's you and Frederick. And I tell you, when she said that, sir, when she said that, whew, I was the happiest man in the land, because she would have whipped me. Well, after 2 hours, I got up, and master stayed down. The last 6 months of my presence on that plantation, I have you know that he never touched me again. Yeah, he said, Frederick, don't have me get at you, but in my mind I said, Master, you don't want no more of this, so keep it moving. And that's what he did. Now, if he was a weak slave, yes, he would whip you. He would beat you. And my heart went out to those poor, weak slaves. Well, they moved me to another plantation, Master Freeman. I got on Master Freeman's plantation. And believe it or not, I started having Sunday school. I had started having Sunday school. I will let you know, going back a little bit, that I used to spend my time with a man by the name of Mr. Lawson. Mr. Lawson, he had his own little business. He would go to plantations and he would fix shoes for the horses. But he also was a stern believer in God, even though he couldn't read, and he would have me to read the Bible for him. So I had that part down. So when I got to Master Freeman on the weekend, I would have Sunday school out in the woods with the slaves. Well, I have you know there's always a Judas in the gathering. That Judas went back and told Master that I was out there teaching the slaves. And they came in and burst up out what? out gathering. And being that I was the one that knew how to read, ma'am, I used to write passes for the other slaves. That's right. Well, we were planning on an escape, but a couple of slaves couldn't wait. So one day, as we was in the kitchen eating biscuits, I just happened to look out the window. As I looked out the window, I saw 2 horses with 6 legs. I ain't never seen a horse with 6 legs. But this day I saw 2 horses with 6 legs, or 4 horses, but 2 of them had 6 legs. Well, those other 2 legs, or the other 4 legs, belonged to the slaves who couldn't wait for us to escape, so they tried to escape on their own. And when the masters got off the horse, they came charging in the house. Where's Master Freeman at? I need to talk to him. Master Freeman's wife, she came to me and she said, you little yellow skag, I know you were the one that wrote those passes. Well, when she left, there was another slave standing in the kitchen with me, and when she left, he hollered at me, Frederick, what should I do with my pass? I said, you better eat it. I said, all right, well, don't eat and get a whipping. I have you know, he put that pass in between them 2 breads, and it was gone. I didn't hesitate, because I ate mine. Even though it got stuck right there, I don't care. At least they couldn't figure out or see that I was the one writing these passes. Well, they took us to jail anyway. When they took us to jail, Master Wildwood came and got me, and he took me back home. When he took me back home, he taught me a trade. That trade allowed me to make $6 a week. When I got that pay, I had to take that $6 and give it to Master. Master felt guilty. So you know what he did in return? He gave me a penny. Ma'am, thank you for shaking your head. Because guess what? I got another job. This time I was making $25. Oh, I'm sorry, $10. I didn't tell Master that. So you know what I did? I took Master $6 and I kept the $4. That's right. Because I had planned that eventually my years as a slave was coming to an end. And during this time, I wound up courtshiping. And I started courtshiping, if you will. That's myself, and that's Anna. Okay? And I started courtshiping. When we started courtshiping, Anna wound up selling all her stuff. And not only that, she came up with a fake pass from a friend of hers. I gathered a Navy suit, and I wound up getting on that train thanks to my beautiful wife, Anna. Well, she wasn't my wife at the time, my girlfriend. Well, I made my way to New York. And when I made my way to New York, I was taken to a gentleman's name of Mr. Ruggles. Mr. Ruggles was one of the few black lawyers in New York. When I got there, he allowed me to stay overnight. When I came downstairs the next day, you know who was sitting in the parlor, living room? No other than my Anna. Mr. Ruggles said, you can't stay here long. And let me let you know this. Mr. Ruggles and I had a deep conversation. The conversation was, we need to change your name. I didn't tell you my name. Are you ready for my name? It was no other than Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey. Yes. So Mr. Ruggles and I, we got into a wealthy conversation about my name. He said, you need to change your name. I said, well, what name would you prescribe? How about Johnson? Frederick Johnson. I said, okay, well, as long as I keep my Frederick. So I went from Frederick, which I just told you, to Frederick Johnson. At that point, after marrying us, as you see here, this is us getting married by the pastor, Peterman, who came in by the request of Mr. Ruggles. All right, here's the marriage certificate. All right, I need you to leave, Frederick. Congratulations on your marriage. I need you to leave. So we get on the train and we go to New Bedford. When we get to New Bedford, right away we run into the Lawsons. I'm sorry, the Johnsons. While we're sitting there, yes, another Johnson. While we're sitting there having coffee, Mr. Johnson says, I think you need to change your name because there's a lot of Johnsons here and you might get caught up. I said, okay, well, what name do you prescribe? He said, well, we've been looking at it. We saw that there was a play. And I was looking at the itinerary. There's a gentleman in the play by the name of Douglas. How about that name? Sounds interesting. So I wound up taking the name and I said, well, let's do this. Let's add another S, Douglas. He said, you sure? I said, yes, because when you pronounce my name, there's prestigious there. Douglas. So everybody that was in the room, well, there's only 4 people, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson and my wife Anna, all of a sudden when I said, Douglas, they responded by, yes, Mr. Douglas. So at that point I left, went and got a job and what have you, and then all of a sudden, sir, while I was cleaning the chimney, putting my clothes on, because I just got finished cleaning 3 of them, Mr. Lassiter, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Lassiter came. And ma'am, he said, look, have you ever heard of the Liberator? I said, no, what is it? He said, it's a newspaper. He said, you should read it. As a matter of fact, I'm only charging him 10 cents for it. And I told him, I said, I don't have no money. He said, but it's only 10 cents. He said, I tell you what, I'll give it to you. I said, I don't want your charity. And you know what he said? Oh, you one of them uppity Negroes. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, you one of them educated Negroes. I said, I have you know, you're right, I have a PhD. And he said, yeah, I figured he was. Yeah, he said, I have a PhD, and guess where it's at? He said, where? I said, then I took my shirt off. I said, there it is on my back. He said, oh, I didn't know. He said, well, how did you get so educated? I said, because I took time, I snuck to read, to make sure that I was educated, at least a little bit. So he says, you know, you need to tell, I'll give you this. So what happened is, the lady who I was just finished doing her chimney, she came out and gave me 20 cents. I gave Mr. Lassiter 10 cents to get his newspaper. Eventually, I get invited to the anti-slavery meeting. As a matter of fact, there it is, anti-slavery meeting, turnout. So I go and I sit way in the back. As I sit in the back, not to be noticed, I couldn't help be noticing because, sir, the hair gave me away. So the gentleman came over and said, Frederick, I want to introduce you to somebody. So I wound up following him. Took me in the back. And who was the gentleman? Mr. William Lloyd Garrison. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't get too confused because of the time that we are in 2023. But I'll have you know, I fell in love with Mr. Garrison. Anything Mr. Garrison wanted me to do, I was willing to do it at no cost. And the reason why, because here's another white man. And keep in mind, I met him before I met Mr. Brown, John Brown. But here's a white man that was willing to put the lead all on the line for the freedom of black people in this country. And that's why I fell in love with him. Well, guess what? Next thing I know, he had me get up on a podium at 23 years old and start and speak. Sir, I was nervous, shaky legs, and I was stumbling like I don't know what. And not only was I stumbling, ma'am, guess what? I wasn't even looking out at the audience. There were all white people out there. I was looking at Mr. Garrison, giving him all the credit. And all of a sudden he says,